All right, let's talk serious business. If you have ever had somebody cast a spell on you, if you ever suffered any sort of spiritual attack, this video is for you. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how everything is energy. Even a spell is energy. Whether it's positive or negative, energy. Everything around us is energy. The words of Nikola Tesla could not have been any truer. If you're new here, my name is Kati. If not, welcome back. Welcome to the Metaphysical Babes. Here I talk about mindset, I talk about spirituality, I talk about manifestation, and most importantly, how to become spiritually resilient, how to also build a resilient mindset. In today's video, I want to talk to you about my experience when I was living in Haiti and how somebody cast a spell on me, and I had no idea. And it came from the family of somebody that I was dating. This is a very personal subject for me, and I avoid talking about it because there's such a taboo, sentiment around speaking anything that has to do with spirituality in the magical sense of it, or as people know it, unfortunately, as a voodoo. But inside of that same spirituality which I'm talking about, it offers a lot of secrets for you to detangle yourself, right? Detangle yourself from spiritual warfares, from spells, from anything that could potentially harm your spirit. I always say this in this channel, that we are led by spirit. Even if we look into the Bible in Ephesians 6 verse 12, it talks about that the fight is more spiritual than it is physical, because we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but rather principalities, dark powers and so on. You know it if you know your Bible. So even if you look into Joe Dispenza's book, Becoming Supernatural, although there's a scientific approach to it, it is a book that lets you understand that everything is energy wrapped around mindset or thoughts, actions, and how you can change your reality by simply learning how to, I'm going to say, manipulate your own energy. And this is what reality is all about. The matrix is in your mind. It's not outside of yourself. If you can control your energy, you can manipulate energy, then you can control the reality in which we live, which is at the lower dimensional frequencies, right? In the 3D frequencies. So without really we're not trying to be too technical. I want to get into the story. I became sick, very ill. And every time that I would get sick, I would be okay for 2 days, and then, my health would again decline. But I had this deep feeling that something was more seriously wrong, that it wasn't like a natural flu, the way I have the flu now, but it felt it, right? That it was not natural. I felt as if I was dying. And I said to myself that something's deeply wrong, and I could not sleep at night. See, if you've ever been under spiritual attacks, you understand that your nights are very disturbed. You're not sleeping. You have thoughts running, miles per second about something's deeply wrong. And within yourself, your intuition tells you energetically, you are not okay. So, for a disclaimer, I have to say that I am not brought up in a family that talks about these type of things. Very religious. I don't know if they're before, when they were younger, family members, they were into that kind of stuff, but I did not grow up around that. I grew up Catholic. They taught me how to pray, to read the Bible. Later on in life, I made my own, chose my own spiritual path. But it is just to say that, I was never really led into that path by family members, or I didn't grow up in that. So, but, when you're Black and especially from the Caribbean, your parents talk, people talk. They would talk about stories, they tell stories. And you understand that there are things that govern the reality in which we live, right? And you don't just happen to be part of this reality. You also play a role in it. And, but then of course there's a higher power that governs all things, which, some call God, some call the universe, some call the divine. And then you have, a little bit lower than the divine would be like angels and spirit teams or ancestors, whatever you want to call them, right? And unfortunately, they don't tell you this truth. And this is my problem with like people with, within my culture, my community, they know that they exist, but they never really make it a subject of conversation. It's never really discussed, and, they talk about God, they talk about Jesus and stuff like that, which I understand, but they would never also tell you that even Jesus himself, had to fight against certain spirits, certain entities, certain maybe energies, right? And Jesus was himself very spiritually resilient. And we are not that different from that man that everybody talks about. And this is why now people talk about the Christ consciousness and so on, right? So to go back into my story, so I would wake up in the middle of the night with those thoughts of like, something is deeply wrong with me and I need to figure it out. I need to find out what's going on. And it so happened that an aunt of mine sent a cousin to stay with me. I was living, alone. At the time I had broken up from that relationship. And I would get sick. And my cousin comes over to stay with me and she would cook for me. She would just be there for me, right? And she happened one night to be talking to a friend over the phone. And that friend asked, where are you? And she says, I'm staying with a cousin. And that's who's sick, who's not well. And he goes, well, it turns out that this man actually was a Freemason. I didn't know it at the time. It's a stranger to me. And so he says, well, people don't get sick like that. Is it a belief, within the Haitian culture? I don't know. But later on, he explained to me that the reason why he believes that people don't get sick is because God created us perfectly with no illness. Most of the diseases that come, in life are man-made, either from a lab or either energetically speaking, right? Or some things we, that are out of balance, we get them from nature. But most of the time it's man-made. That's why he always says this, right? So and then my cousin gave me the phone and he said, how are you? And, he was getting to know me and he introduced himself and that was the beginning, of a friendship. And he ended up becoming a spiritual guide for me. And this is where I learned everything that I know about energy. I learned everything as far as that's the secrets of how to heal my energy, how to awaken myself spiritually, and certain rituals to do when I'm not feeling balanced, and rituals to do to attract certain things and to also banish certain things. I learned those things from him and also from interviewing practitioners. And I always say this on this website. I'm not a voodoo practitioner. I'm not in any sort of like specific spirituality, but I'm a highly spiritual person because I had to learn it in order to save myself and then defend myself. And I think that for a moment here in this channel, I was sort of like shying away from that idea because I said, what are people going to think of me? Like I said, voodoo is a very, very taboo subject. Whether you want to call it voodoo, Haitian spirituality, or spirituality in general, I'm talking about the manipulation of energy, owning, your reality and knowing how to use energy to do work on yourself and other people, to attract things or to even banish things. It's all energy. Okay. Like Nikola Tesla says, if you want to understand the universe, think so in terms of energy, vibrations, and frequency. So that's all it is. Right. And I would later have that confirmed. So we developed, the friendship was developed and he said, you know what, we have to look into this for you because I don't think this is something normal, that you're sick and then the way you tell me that you're feeling. But I have to add this, right? When I was getting sick, every time I was getting sick, that I had my intuition was telling me to play Archangel Michael's music on YouTube. So I would let that play all night long because I felt I needed some type of protection, which I couldn't do at the time for myself because I felt helpless. I would get up to sit down on my bed and the whole house was like spinning with me. And I was like, I used to whisper thoughts of like, like phrases of, I think I'm dying. And I used to say that waking up and looking around and being alone and said, I think I'm dying. And I've never ever felt that way in my life. And those thoughts used to come to mind, right? So he said, okay, let's look into it. And you can call it, a lecture. You can call it, I don't know, let's say a lecture, right? So they read cards. So I did it, a long distance. I couldn't be where he was because he was not from the town in which I was living at the time. If you know Haiti a little bit or Port-au-Prince a little bit, I lived in Pétionville, and then he lived in a town, in a different town called Saint-Marc. So he said, okay, I'm going to go. But he said, before I put my hand in fire for you, I need to know that you're a clean person, as far as like, you're not a bad person. And I said, I'm not a bad person. I've never done anything wrong. I grew up in a family that's considered religious. And I don't know anything about those things. I don't know anything about spells or anything like that. So he said, okay. So he trusted me. So he went out and he consulted somebody, an old man, which I still have contacts with. And the old man, pulled cards, and he was able to detect a dark energy, a shadow energy. And he said, this girl, to use these words and translate, he said, this girl is in the dark. So whenever they say that you're in the dark, there's a dark energy, that is pursuing you, that it was a cast, right? So he said, okay. So I was on the phone listening as he was there. And I said, wow, I've never done anything to anyone. Why would anybody want to attack me personally? And then I remembered the story of me dating this man and then his family at some point, they opposed the relationship. And I remember, and I was very innocent and naive, or naively, I used to go to his families and have dinner. And then one time my passport was in my bag, and then I never noticed that they ripped the page of my passport with my picture, my date of birth and everything, right? And so it was one day when I was traveling, I think the following month I was traveling, and then I pulled out my passport, I never checked it. So the day that I was traveling, I opened my passport, and boom, I realized that, the page was ripped off, and I was in shock, and I had to go to the police to do a report. Then I had to go to the American embassy to have it done again and give the report to them that it was vandalized, because it's a government, it's government property pretty much. So I at the time, I just didn't understand the magnitude of that, again, because I never believed that anybody could do anything energetically to harm me, or. So then, I remember when I was filing the report, the police officer said that, ma'am, if you don't pray, you need to start praying. If you don't go to church, you need to start going to church. If you are into that, other stuff, you need to go check and find out, because this is not normal. Nobody does that. They do it with the intention to harm you. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So I let that go. And then, in the months, following that event, I was getting sick and still not thinking that it could be from that. So by the time that we did the lecture, it occurred to me that it came from that situation. And the whole, lecture, sort of like implied that the dark energy was either to have me die in a car accident or fall sick and then die, right? So then, of course, the old man said, any child of God, it is my job to protect them. And this is what we do. And this is why I say to people, you have to understand that inside our Haitian spirituality, it is about healing. It's about banishing, and it's about attracting things. Those who use energy to do harm, I don't know what to call those people. And I don't want to get into that because I don't know anything about that. I know that harm was tried to be done onto me, and all I had to do is to protect myself. Again, even the Bible says it, the fight is a spiritual fight. It's not flesh and blood, okay? It's principalities, it's dark forces, dark energies, and so on, right? So he said to me that my job is to protect children of God, and you are innocent. I can see it. You're a good person. I can see that. I can feel it. And we're going to reverse whatever was sent after you, because nobody has the right to try to harm you, because you are a child of God. And he says my job is to protect any child of God. So they did what they had to do. And at that point, that was the beginning for me of my world of, let's say, spirituality, understanding metaphysics, understanding the occult at a much deeper level. I wasn't just reading about it. I was physically getting myself involved with people that were doing good work to banish things or to attract things. And I said, I need to understand, and also to protect themselves. And if you're Haitian and you happen to be watching this, it is unfortunate that our family or parents, miseducated us on the matter. A lot of times, especially back then, people did work to protect themselves and become spiritually strong so that people don't attack them, so at such levels, and they always try to maintain a high vibrational frequency to avoid, like spiritual attacks, and this is why Haitians, had to sort of like create barriers, against like dark forces and dark energies and stuff like that. So they know a lot of work to do, simple things to do just to be able to banish certain incidents, certain people, evil eye, evil, mouth, or whatever, right? So, and some families, they pass down those types of informations and some don't, and I think that it's a disservice. It weakens, a people spiritually and eventually, mentally, psychologically. And I think this is over the time now, over years, you can see now what's happening, the detriment of, the Haitian culture, the people, what's happening in the country is a result of those things, of course, among other things, and I think knowledge is powerful. You need to know so that you can understand how to survive and how to navigate in life. And that's truly what I came to understand. It happened later in life for me, but better later, than never. So, and I think that, it is time, if you're Black, whatever, Hispanic, whatever you are, to teach your kids about spirituality. I'm not talking about religion. Religion is a business. It's a place people go to, it's a community. Then you can, socialize with people and stuff like that. But spirituality is what is the core of everything. And I think becoming spiritually resilient, spiritually strong should be the goal for everyone. And I'm always going to talk about that in this channel. And whatever you're going to do, whether it's manifestation, whatever you're doing, it's about spirit. It's about spirituality as far as energetic work, is what I mean by that. And I think that I would have to create a part 2 video because I don't want to make it too long and talk a little bit more about Joe Dispenza and what he, how I find the sort of like the common ground between what he talks about and my spirituality, or spirituality in general. But anyway, moving on. That was the beginning for me of this world, of the occult, of the metaphysics, and spirituality, the secrets that lie, inside of Haitian spirituality. I had to understand them because I wanted to protect myself. And I had a right to protect myself because my life is God given. It is not men given. And a man has no right to take my life. And I said, I am the commander and I am the God of my reality because God gives me dominion over my life and whatever is around me. And I am going to take charge of that. And this is what you have to understand. In this world, some men create ways to govern other men so that they can use them for their own benefit. It is real, but you can own that yourself. Once you own yourself, nobody has that capacity, really. That's why it's important to be strong mentally, to not let things affect you, to not let doubt, come and creep into your head. Your thoughts can be very detrimental, especially if you form an environment that is tough. And this is another thing that I want you to understand. I went to a very unstable place like Haiti, but I never let the environment dictate, how I felt inside of me. And that was, for me, it's something that I want to be able to pass on to people, how to build resilience in anything, no matter where you are. If I could, like I say all the time, if I can make it in Haiti, you can make it wherever you are right now. Okay? Be resilient in anything that you do. Do not let your thoughts or anybody control you. TV is made to control other people. The media, the food, everything is a way to control people, to really mold them into becoming what they want them to become so that they can, attain their end goal, which is what I don't know, right? Again, going back to the Bible, it's not flesh and blood. Okay. It's spiritual. It's in the spiritual realm. So you have to stay there and own that, and then you can own reality. You can own your own, the matrix pretty much. So it's just to say this, guys, right? And I'm going to end the video there. You can change your reality today. You can change your life today. The moment you understand that you are in control, nobody else is, and you have every right to be in control of your world, of your life, of your spirit, of your reality. That is your God-given right. Okay. And you make what you want to do with it. As a person, if you can understand that, you can pass that wisdom to your family, to your children. You can pass it down to your community and then eventually your nation. This is how a nation builds strength, really. When you are spiritually strong, nothing can come against you. Okay. Listen, unfortunately, Haiti is in a very, very bad place. I don't know what's happening. They have become very spiritually weak, unfortunately. Although some of them do still understand that and they work with that, right? They know how to manipulate energy, but there are some also that manipulate energy in a very negative way to do harm to others. I would never ever encourage anybody to do harm to anyone because that leaves, bad karma, truthfully, and it may not be in this life, but in another life, you would be, you would pay the consequences of those acts, right? So I want you to understand that you are the master of your reality. Those words are not being just said to make people feel good about themselves. It goes deeper than that. There's a deep truth in that. Become the captain of that boat of your life. Truly become the master of your destiny. And it's by owning reality, by owning the matrix, and by owning your spirit. You're led by spirit. It's there for you, to serve you, to help you. But if you are disconnected with it, it's like the Wi-Fi connection will be low or lost. And then your spirit cannot communicate with you, your higher self, if you want to call it that. The God within, the Christ consciousness and stuff like that. And, and I know that nervous system work is something that I had to do as well, to detach myself from traumas, from bad experiences and things like that left me really destabilized in a way, and, to detach from my body, so I had to do a lot of work, which, I've shared on this channel as well, whether they're ritual, whether they're meditation, whether they're somatic, practices and stuff like that, breath work, all those things, they help you sort of like align within yourself so that you can govern your spirit, you can govern your life and your reality along with the spirits, and the forces of nature, of course, in the presence of the Most High, the divine. This, for me, has been the most important lesson of my life. It's important to talk about it. And I refuse to make this channel into something that is like fluff, really, because reality is that, guys. Okay. People fight, to thrive over, those type of things every day, whether you know it or not. Okay. Whether you believe it or not, they do. Some people don't understand why their lives are taking a trajectory. They think it's because, maybe this is the way that life's been designed for them, not understanding that they are the commanding power. Some people, they get sick. They don't understand that it's an energy thing. They have to work on that, to shift the energy back and align it. Joe Dispenza talks about that again in his book, Becoming Supernatural. Being in the present moment to understand that, something is affecting your energy. That's important. Breath work to remain balanced, to be aligned mind, body, and soul or spirit. All those things are important. The people that talk about them, do not take them for granted. Being in the presence of divine love at all time, do not take them for granted. It's real. It's a fight that we can win, that you can win. Nobody has that right over you. You have the right over your own life, your spirituality. Make it your anchor. I put together a thing for, how to find a spiritual path. I need to rework this thing. because like I said, I was sort of like shying away from the whole, of Black spirituality, because you find all kinds of spiritualities out there, Buddhist, Taoism, this, that. But when it comes to Black spirituality, they want to make you believe that it's bad, it's evil, it's devilish, it's blood drinking, pinning a doll, something like, what the F, That's not true. A lot of wisdom and secrets are in Black spirituality. It was about protection. Haitians, they knew a lot of things to do when they were taken away from their land in Africa and brought to the Caribbean and elsewhere. They were doing things to protect themselves when they had no physical guns or weapons. They were doing things energetically to protect themselves so that they could get out of slavery. That's real, guys. That's real knowledge that we cannot deny anymore as a community, as a people. And Black spirituality is everyone's spirituality. It's one of the most ancient spiritualities that you can find, along with like Eastern or Asian spirituality, like India, for instance. In China, they can acknowledge these spiritualities, but they cannot acknowledge African or Black spirituality. Knowledge is power. And the moment you can accept that, your world is yours for you to govern, to lead. And then your life is not going to be like something that somebody, made you become or do whatever. It would be your own story to tell, not another person to tell your story. So I think it's time we wake up in that sense. And I hope this video resonated with you. I'm sorry. I just decided to get out the shower and share this. I don't want to talk about anything else other than that and how we can strengthen ourselves. I don't want to, it's not like I'm trying to teach anybody, anything that they don't know. You know it. You just don't want to accept that because you've been taught to neglect that part of yourself, to adopt something that has nothing to do with the true, with your true self. And I think it's time that you put it to rest and own that. Accept that, that spirituality is the path that you want to choose because you understand why it was there. If it exists, it's because it serves a purpose. And you will learn to protect yourself, energy work, rituals and stuff like that. I'm putting something together. Honestly, guys, there's so much that I know that sometimes I'm overwhelmed on how to transfer that. And I need to work on that. I'm not going to lie to you. And sometimes I go into this subject, I go into that subject. That's another discipline that I have, to give myself and stay on track here and if I decided to come in here and put my face on there, and I have to be brave enough to tell the true story and not divert from it because I'm trying to not be judged by my own people because I'm deciding to talk about, something like that. It was real. It was I don't know why anybody would want to harm me, through a spell, but it was real. And it's like they can try to freaking, switch your destiny and shit. Like I never believed in things like that until it happened to me. And I invite you to look into it on your end. Get to know yourself to the level of your energy. When your energy shifts, understand what's happening. Where is it coming from? Is it a belief? Is it from trauma? Is it a generational thing? Is it just a simple bad experience? Is it somebody doing something to you? Get on top of that. Do not let anybody trying to govern your life until, your life is taken away from you in a, stupid, dumb way, So, all right, that's it for me, guys. This video is longer than I really wanted it to be. I hope, you draw lessons from it, things from it, and reach out to me if you have questions. I'm now more than open, to work with people, to offer you things that you could do for yourself to change the trajectory of your life and live the life that God intended for you. All right, guys, let's continue to prosper together. Thank you for being here. God bless you always.